The grand chandelier above gleamed in the dim light, casting soft shadows across the lavish ballroom. Guests mingled, glasses clinked, and laughter echoed through the room, but for Jason Caldwell, the wealthiest bachelor in the city, nothing seemed to matter. His eyes were fixed on her, Sarah, the maid who'd worked in his family's estate for the past 2 years. He had never paid much attention to her. To him, she was just another face in the crowd, part of the hired help. But tonight was different. Tonight, everything was different. Sarah was no longer the maid, she was his bride. The agreement had seemed simple enough. Jason's closest friends had dared him to do it. Marry the maid, prove you can elevate someone from the dirt, they'd taunted, thinking it was nothing more than a joke. But for Jason, a man who'd never backed down from a challenge, it was the perfect opportunity to show that he was not just a wealthy playboy but a man of substance. He had married her to prove a point, to win the bet. Jason, you're a lucky man, his best friend, Mark, had said earlier that night, slapping him on the back. You've got yourself a beautiful bride. Jason had nodded, forcing a smile, but his mind was elsewhere. Sarah wasn't beautiful, at least not in the way he was used to. She was modest, plain even, with soft brown eyes and a shy demeanor. Her brown hair, always tied up in a neat bun while she worked, now hung loosely around her shoulders in soft curls. It was the first time he'd seen her without the starched uniform and the careful, composed look she wore every day. Still, he was intrigued, though only by the challenge he had taken on. The ceremony had been quick, simple, and over before Jason could really absorb it. But it was the reception, the moment they stood alone in the grand, dimly lit ballroom, that was now heavy with the weight of the wager he'd made. Sarah stood beside him, her hands clasped nervously in front of her as the guests continued to celebrate. He could see her trying her best to blend in, to act as if she belonged. But Jason knew it wasn't easy for her. This wasn't her world. He leaned in toward her, his voice low. Are you happy? Sarah looked up at him, her eyes wide with uncertainty. Happy, she repeated, as if the word was foreign to her. You married a rich man. Surely, that's something to smile about. She blinked, her lips parting slightly, and for a moment, Jason thought he might have said something wrong. Her smile was small, but it felt real, if only for a second. I didn't marry for money. Jason chuckled lightly, trying to ease the tension. Then why did you marry me, Sarah? She swallowed hard, glancing around the room before looking back at him. You asked me. I had no choice. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Jason's heart sank. He didn't want to acknowledge it, but he had to admit, there was something more to her than he had anticipated. Something that didn't fit into his carefully planned narrative. The maid he had married wasn't as simple as he had assumed. Just then, the clock struck midnight. The guests continued their festivities, but Jason's attention was entirely on Sarah. He leaned in closer, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He had been right all along to accept the bet. But as he stood there, staring at her, something else, something unexpected, began to stir inside him. He hadn't realized it until now, but Sarah was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her quiet strength, her grace in the face of this situation, it was almost otherworldly. Jason's eyes narrowed. There was more to her, something hidden just beneath the surface. Sarah suddenly turned her head, a soft gasp escaping her lips. Jason didn't have time to react before she hurriedly pulled her hand away from her side. But in the moment, he saw it. A small, faint scar on her wrist, a mark that didn't belong there. He blinked, trying to focus. Was it an accident? A burn or a cut? But it looked deliberate, almost as if it had been there for years, hidden by the sleeves of her uniform. His curiosity piqued, Jason reached out, gently touching her wrist. What's this? His voice was low, almost a whisper, but Sarah flinched, pulling her hand away. It's nothing, she said quickly, her face paling slightly. Nothing. Jason's gaze hardened, his suspicions growing. It doesn't look like nothing. Sarah hesitated, looking around as if she expected someone to appear from the shadows. She stepped back, her expression flitting from fear to uncertainty before she settled on one word that froze Jason in place. You don't know who I really am. The air around them seemed to still. The guests, the music, the chatter, they all faded into the background. It was just the two of them now, and Jason could feel a strange pulse of energy between them. She had said it with such intensity, such certainty, that it sent a shiver down his spine. Jason opened his mouth, ready to press for answers, but before he could say a word, Sarah spun on her heel and walked toward the grand staircase that led to the upper floor. Her back was straight, but there was something fragile in her posture, something that screamed for Jason to follow. He stood frozen for a moment, torn between the bet and the growing sense that there was something far more significant going on here. He could just ignore it, go on with the charade and finish the night as planned. But a part of him, the part that had never backed down from a challenge, knew he couldn't just let it go. With a quick step forward, he followed her up the stairs. The hallway at the top of the grand staircase was dimly lit, the only light coming from the soft glow of antique lamps hanging from the walls. Jason watched Sarah as she moved to the end of the corridor, stopping in front of a closed door. She hesitated for a moment before looking back at him. Her face a mask of fear and resolve. I didn't mean to, she began, but her voice faltered, and she shook her head. I never wanted this. Jason's mind raced. What's going on, Sarah? What's happening? Without answering, she pushed open the door and stepped inside, motioning for him to follow. Jason didn't hesitate this time. He stepped into the room, his heart pounding in his chest. The door shut behind him with a soft click, leaving them alone in the dimly lit space. Sarah stood in the center of the room, her hands trembling at her sides. I've been hiding something from you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jason's curiosity boiled over. What? What is it? Her gaze met his, and for the first time, Jason saw fear in her eyes. You should have never made that bet. It was never supposed to happen like this. Before Jason could respond, Sarah reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, weathered envelope. Her hands were shaking as she handed it to him. This is who I really am. Jason took the envelope, his fingers brushing hers. His heart raced as he tore it open, the contents spilling onto the floor. Inside were several documents, photographs, and a single letter, its edges frayed with age. He scanned the documents, his eyes widening with each word he read. The photographs were of a woman he didn't recognize, yet there was something eerily familiar about her. The letter, written in elegant handwriting, detailed a life he could hardly comprehend. Sarah wasn't just a maid. She was someone entirely different, someone powerful, someone with a secret that could change everything. And as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Jason realized that the woman he had married on a bet was not the person he had thought her to be. This was just the beginning. Jason sat down in the chair beside Sarah, still reeling from what he had just uncovered. The photographs, the letter, nothing made sense. His mind raced, trying to piece together what this all meant. The woman in the photographs didn't resemble the quiet maid he had married. She was someone with a power, a position, that Jason couldn't even begin to comprehend. But why would she hide it? Why would she marry him, of all people? He looked over at Sarah. She stood by the window, her back to him, as if she couldn't face the truth either. The soft light from the moon illuminated her features, casting a delicate glow on her face. Her hands were clasped tightly together, her knuckles white, and her posture tense. She looked fragile, like a bird caught in a storm. Sarah, what is all this? Jason finally managed to ask, his voice strained. What does it mean? She turned slowly, her eyes avoiding his. I never wanted you to find out this way. Her voice trembled, as though the words themselves were too heavy to bear. I thought I could keep it hidden. I thought I could live a normal life, be just another maid in your house. But the truth is, I'm not who you think I am. Jason's heart beat faster. Then who are you? You're telling me all of this is some kind of lie. Sarah took a deep breath, as though steeling herself. Not a lie, but a secret. One that has haunted me for years. She stepped closer, her hands still shaking. The woman in those photographs, that's me. But it's a version of me that no longer exists. I was someone else before I came here. Someone powerful, someone who had everything, until it was all taken from me. Jason felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Taken from you? What do you mean? She hesitated, her gaze distant, as though she was seeing something beyond the room. I was born into a life of wealth and privilege. My family was powerful, politicians, business magnates. They controlled everything. I was expected to follow in their footsteps, to live the life they planned for me. I never had a choice. Jason's mind was racing, trying to grasp the gravity of what she was saying. So, you're telling me you're not just some maid working for my family? That you come from money too? Sarah nodded slowly. I come from a world far removed from this one. But it's a world I can never return to. She paused, her voice faltering. I ran away. I had to. It was the only way I could survive. Jason leaned forward, captivated by her story. Survive? From what? She swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for answers in the shadows. From the people who controlled my life. My family, they didn't want me to leave. But I had no choice. They were dangerous, Jason. They didn't care about me, they only cared about power, about control. And I became a threat to them. Jason's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of her words, the depth of the fear she carried. What happened to you? What did they do? Her eyes filled with pain, and she shook her head. I had to disappear. I changed my identity, cut all ties with the people I once knew. I couldn't even keep my own name. Sarah. Sarah wasn't my real name. She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. I took on a new identity. A new life. I became someone else. I had no choice but to vanish, to become invisible. And that's when I started working for your family. Jason was silent for a moment, processing everything she had said. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The woman standing before him, the one he had married on a whim, was someone entirely different. Someone who had lived a life that Jason couldn't even begin to fathom. He stood up, pacing the room. But why marry me, then? Why accept this bet? Why would you choose to go along with it? Sarah looked down at her hands, avoiding his gaze. I didn't have a choice in that either. The people I was running from, they don't just let you go. They're always watching. Always looking for you. Marrying you was part of a plan. A way to keep them from finding me. Jason stopped in his tracks, his mind reeling. A plan? So, you married me to protect yourself? She nodded. Yes. I didn't know you, Jason. I didn't know who you were or what you wanted from me. But I knew you weren't someone they would suspect. You were just another wealthy man with no real ties to me. It was the perfect cover. I thought I could keep you at arm's length, that you'd never really care about me. But I was wrong. Jason's heart tightened. You're telling me I've been part of some plan all along. And you never told me? Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. I didn't want you to be part of this. I didn't want to bring you into my world. I didn't want to drag you into my mess. But it was the only way. And I never imagined. I'd feel anything for you. Jason's thoughts were spinning. A part of him was furious, angry at how everything had unfolded. He had married her on a bet, never once considering that she might have had a reason to agree. But another part of him, the part that had always prided himself on seeing things through, wanted to understand. He wanted to know the whole story, to uncover the secrets she was holding back. Then why now? Jason asked. Why reveal all of this tonight? Why not before? Sarah took a deep breath. Because I can't keep running anymore. The people I've been hiding from, they're getting closer. I've been getting threats, Jason. And the more time I spend here with you, the more danger you're in too. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. You're telling me I'm in danger now? Sarah nodded, her voice trembling. Yes. They know I'm here. They're watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when they do, they won't care who they hurt. Jason's mind raced, trying to piece everything together. He had married Sarah on a bet, thinking it was nothing more than a game. But this was real. Her life was in danger, and so was his. The stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. For the first time since the wedding, Jason looked at her not as a stranger or as someone he had married for the wrong reasons, but as a woman in need. She had been living in fear for so long, trying to outrun a past that wouldn't let her go. And now, somehow, he was a part of that past. I'm not going anywhere, Jason said firmly, his voice steady. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. What? I'm not leaving you, Sarah, he repeated. Whatever this is, whatever trouble you're in, I'm with you. You don't have to do this alone. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Jason replied, his gaze never leaving hers. I don't care who's after you. I don't care what secrets you've been hiding. I'm here. And I'll help you face whatever comes next. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. For the first time, she seemed to let down her guard, to trust him in a way she hadn't before. But it's dangerous, Jason. You have no idea what they're capable of. I don't care, Jason said, his voice filled with conviction. I'm not going to let them hurt you. And in that moment, something shifted between them. The walls Sarah had built around herself, the walls she had kept up for so long, began to crack. Jason's words, his promise to stand by her, had broken through. She wasn't alone anymore. As Sarah finally let herself lean into him, her face buried against his chest, Jason knew that nothing would ever be the same. The stakes had changed. This wasn't just about a bet anymore. This was about survival. The revelation had set in motion something that neither of them could have predicted. And now, they were both in this together, whether they liked it or not. Jason couldn't sleep. The night stretched on in oppressive silence, the only sound the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath his restless movements. Sarah had fallen asleep beside him, her small form curled up against his side, but even her quiet breathing couldn't soothe his racing thoughts. His mind replayed the conversation they had shared earlier, Sarah's confession, the photographs, and the haunting realization that her past was far more dangerous than he had imagined. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, Jason gently shifted away from Sarah, careful not to wake her. He needed to think, to process everything that had been laid bare. He couldn't believe what she had told him. He hadn't asked for any of this. He hadn't asked to be dragged into her world of secrets and danger. And yet, here he was, tangled in a web he didn't fully understand. With a deep sigh, Jason stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the quiet streets below. His mind wandered back to the first time he'd met Sarah, the innocent maid who had caught his attention with nothing more than her soft voice and the way she always seemed to keep her distance. He had been drawn to her, yes, but not in any profound way. At least, not at first. It had been a bet, an impulsive challenge between friends, and Sarah had seemed like the perfect pawn. But now? Now everything was different. Jason's eyes narrowed as he thought about the people Sarah had run from. Powerful. Dangerous. Those were the words she had used to describe her family. And yet, the more he thought about it, the more he couldn't help but wonder, how much of her story was real. How much of it was just a convenient lie to explain away her actions. He needed to know more. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling him out of his thoughts. He glanced at the screen, his heart sinking when he saw the name. David, 9:05 a.m. David was his closest friend. Or, at least, he used to be. The two of them had gone through everything together, from high school to university to the business world. David had been the one to suggest the bet in the first place. He had thought it was harmless, a fun challenge to see if Jason could win over the quiet, mysterious maid. But now, with everything that had happened, Jason wasn't sure if he could trust David. Jason swiped the screen to answer. "Jason, we need to talk," David's voice came through the phone, low and urgent. "It's about Sarah." Jason's pulse quickened. "What about her?" David hesitated before responding, as if trying to find the right words. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been hearing things. There are people asking about her. People who aren't exactly friendly." Jason's stomach twisted into knots. "What do you mean, not friendly? Who's asking?" "I don't know all the details yet," David said, his voice tight. "But these people, Jason, they have connections. They're the kind of people who can make things disappear without a trace." Jason's mind raced, his heart hammering in his chest. He had suspected as much. The danger was real. And it was closer than he had thought. "David, I need you to be clear. What are you telling me?" Jason's voice was a low growl now, fear and anger mixing in his words. "I'm telling you that Sarah's past isn't just a past. It's still hunting her. And by extension, it's hunting you too. You need to be careful. Watch your back. Don't trust anyone." Jason's hands clenched into fists as he listened to David's words. The weight of them settled heavily on his chest. "What should I do?" "Stay close to her," David replied quickly. "But don't trust her completely. Not yet. She's hiding something, Jason. I know you don't want to hear it, but I can't ignore what I've been hearing. There's more to her than she's letting on. And I think she's using you as a shield. But I don't know for what." Before Jason could respond, David hung up. The line went dead, and Jason was left standing there, staring at the phone, a cold shiver running down his spine. Stay close to her. Don't trust her. David's words echoed in his head, repeating like a broken record. Was David right? Was Sarah hiding something even darker than he realized? He didn't know who to trust anymore. The night before, Jason had been so consumed by his thoughts that he hadn't noticed Sarah stir beside him. When he glanced back at the bed, her eyes were open, her gaze focused on him with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Her expression was unreadable, as though she was trying to figure him out just as much as he was trying to figure her out. "Did he call?" she asked softly, her voice hoarse from sleep. Jason nodded, still processing the conversation. "Yes. He's heard things. People are looking for you, Sarah. People who are dangerous." A flicker of fear passed over her face, but she quickly masked it, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I've been running for so long, Jason. I thought I could escape. But now, it's clear they'll never stop looking for me." Jason's heart ached at the raw emotion in her voice. He wanted to comfort her, but the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, David's warning, kept him from doing so. He had to know the truth, even if it hurt. He couldn't keep living in the shadows of her secrets. "I need to know everything, Sarah," he said, his voice steady. "The whole truth. Not just bits and pieces." She flinched, as though his words had struck her physically. "You want to know everything? You won't like it." "I don't care if I like it," Jason said, his voice firm. I need to know who I'm married to. I need to know what I'm up against. For a long moment, she didn't speak. The silence between them stretched on, thick and heavy, until Sarah finally exhaled a long breath, as though she had resigned herself to something she couldn't avoid any longer. All right, she said quietly, but you need to understand that this isn't just about me anymore. It's about both of us. Jason's chest tightened, his mind already bracing for what he was about to hear. I'm listening. The hidden family. Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes avoiding Jason's. My family. They're not just wealthy. They don't just run businesses or have political connections. They're powerful in a way most people don't understand. My father, he's the head of a network that controls more than you can imagine. From legitimate businesses to illegal operations, they have their fingers in every pie. And when I tried to escape, when I ran, they didn't just let me go. They made sure I had nowhere to turn. Jason's mind reeled as she spoke. He couldn't fathom what she was saying. He had married a woman with ties to criminal syndicates, political corruption, and even illegal enterprises. It felt like something out of a thriller, but here she was, telling him it was all real. Why didn't you tell me this before? Jason demanded, his frustration bubbling to the surface. I couldn't, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought I could protect you. But now I don't think I can. Jason was silent, trying to process her words. His entire world was unraveling before him, and it was all because of a decision he had made on a whim. I'm sorry, Jason, Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I never wanted this for you. But it's too late now. Jason felt the weight of her confession, and for the first time, he felt the full scope of what he was getting into. The danger was real. The stakes were higher than he could ever have imagined. The first step toward survival. Jason stood up abruptly, his mind made up. We need to get out of here. Now. Sarah's eyes widened. What? No, Jason, it's not that simple. I'm not asking for your permission, he said firmly. We're leaving. Tonight. I'll figure out the rest later, but we can't stay here. Sarah shook her head, panic flashing across her face. You don't understand. They'll find us. They'll find you too. It's too dangerous. You don't know what you're dealing with. Jason grabbed her hand, his grip firm but gentle. I don't care, Sarah. You're not going through this alone. I'm with you. Let's go. And as he led her out of the house, Jason knew that the real battle was just beginning. The secrets she had hidden for so long were no longer just hers to carry. They were his now, too. Jason's heart raced as he watched Sarah frantically pack a bag, her hands shaking as she stuffed clothes and belongings into the suitcase. She moved quickly, but with an urgency that spoke of more than just fear, it spoke of survival. She had been running for years, but now, with Jason in tow, everything had changed. They were no longer just trying to escape, they were now running with purpose, with the knowledge that danger was close, far too close. Jason didn't know exactly what they were running from. The details were still a blur, clouded by Sarah's vague, fragmented story of her family's vast criminal empire and the web of lies that had entangled them. He only knew one thing for certain, Sarah was in danger, and so was he. And now, they had no choice but to flee. I'm not letting you do this alone, Jason said, his voice firm as he picked up the last of their bags. Sarah glanced over at him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. I never wanted this to happen, Jason. I never wanted you to be a part of this world. I don't care about that, Jason replied, his tone softer now. I care about you. And that's all that matters. Her eyes softened for a moment, but the fear never left them. You don't understand, she whispered, shaking her head. My family, they won't stop. They won't just let us walk away. Jason felt a knot tighten in his stomach as he watched her pace. Her words were chilling, but they only confirmed the urgency of their situation. They were already late, they had to leave before her family's men came looking. But the more Jason thought about it, the more it became clear, he had no idea what they were up against. And it terrified him. The first sign of danger. They left the house just as dawn broke, the quiet morning air offering a brief moment of calm before the storm. Jason drove, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing as he tried to think of their next move. Sarah sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the road ahead, lost in her own thoughts. For the first hour, there was nothing. No sign of pursuit. But Jason knew it was only a matter of time. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see shadows trailing them, but there was nothing, yet. "Where are we going?" Sarah finally asked, her voice tentative. "I don't know," Jason admitted, his eyes flickering to her briefly before returning to the road. "We'll figure it out when we get there." "I can't just run forever, Jason," she said, her voice cracking. "My family will find us. They have resources, connections you can't even begin to imagine. They have people everywhere." Jason swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising panic. "We'll figure it out. We have time." But even as the words left his mouth, something inside him knew they didn't. Time was running out. Jason had no plan, no idea how to escape the looming danger that was closing in on them. But one thing was clear, he couldn't let Sarah face this alone. Not now, not ever. Just as the silence between them deepened, Jason's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. He fumbled to pull it from his pocket and glanced at the screen. David, 10:03 a.m. Jason's heart sank as he saw the name. The last time David had called, it had been with a warning, one that he still couldn't shake. But Jason knew he had to answer. He couldn't afford to lose touch with anyone who might know more about the threat they were facing. He pressed the phone to his ear, trying to sound calm. "David?" "Jason, you need to listen to me," David's voice came through, shaky and urgent. "They're already looking for you. I don't know how, but they know you're gone. They've been asking about you, about Sarah. And trust me, you don't want to get tangled up in this any more than you already are." Jason felt a chill spread through him. "What do you mean they know? How are they?" "There's someone inside the house," David interrupted, his voice tight with fear. "Someone I didn't expect. Someone close to you." Jason's breath caught in his throat. "What do you mean, someone close to me?" "I don't know how, but they're watching you, Jason. They're watching both of you. And they won't stop. You've been marked. I don't know what you're planning, but if you want any chance of survival, you need to get out of sight, now." Before Jason could respond, David hung up. The silence in the car was deafening. Jason's pulse pounded in his ears as he absorbed the weight of David's words. They weren't just running from Sarah's family anymore, they were being hunted. Someone, somewhere, knew exactly where they were. And that knowledge filled Jason with dread. "Jason?" Sarah's voice broke through the fog of his thoughts. "What did he say?" "They know we're gone," Jason replied, his voice grim. "And they're watching us. They have eyes everywhere." For a moment, Sarah didn't say anything. Her hands gripped the armrest, her knuckles turning white. The fear was back, more intense than ever. Jason could feel it radiating off her, but he had to stay focused. He couldn't let her see the fear in his own heart. If he did, it would break them both. "We need to make a stop," Jason said suddenly, pulling the car onto a deserted highway exit. Sarah turned to him, confusion in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "We're not going to outrun them on the road. We need to disappear," Jason explained, his voice hardening with determination. "I know a place, a cabin. It's remote. We can hide there for a while. We can regroup. Sarah's eyes flickered with skepticism. How do you know this place? I've used it before, Jason replied shortly. It's safe. For now. The cabin. The drive was long and uneventful, the silence between them stretching on as the landscape shifted from urban sprawl to the quiet wilderness. Jason focused on the road, his mind constantly scanning for any sign of danger. But nothing came. No shadows. No cars trailing them. When they finally reached the cabin, it was nothing more than a small, weathered structure tucked away in a dense thicket of trees. It looked untouched, as if it had been abandoned for years. But to Jason, it was perfect, a safe house, a place to hide until they figured out their next move. As they stepped out of the car, the cold air hit them, sharp and biting. Jason could see his breath in the air, and he instantly regretted not bringing jackets. But they couldn't waste time going back to the city to retrieve their belongings. They had to stay one step ahead. Inside the cabin, the air smelled musty, but it was still warm. The floor creaked underfoot, but everything seemed solid. Jason turned to Sarah, who was standing at the doorway, looking uncertain. It's not much, he said, trying to sound reassuring, but it'll have to do. Sarah nodded, but there was no comfort in her eyes. She looked around the room, taking in the bare furnishings, the faded wallpaper. Jason saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled as she set down the bag. I'm sorry, she whispered, as if speaking to herself. This was never supposed to happen. Jason walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out, Sarah. We'll make it through this. I won't let anything happen to you. But as he said the words, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was already too late. A dangerous game. They spent the next few hours settling in, unpacking what little they had. Jason made a fire in the fireplace, and Sarah sat quietly by it, her thoughts miles away. Do you ever wonder, she said suddenly, breaking the silence, what would have happened if we had never met? Jason's eyes softened as he looked at her. No. I don't. I know what happened. And I know that I'm here for a reason. I'm not leaving. But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. There was so much about Sarah's past that he still didn't understand. So many questions left unanswered. And as much as he wanted to protect her, he knew that sometimes survival meant more than just staying close. It meant facing the truth. The truth that was just beginning to reveal itself. The days blurred together as Jason and Sarah settled into an uneasy rhythm. The cabin, secluded deep in the woods, offered them a semblance of safety, at least for the time being. The constant threat of being discovered hovered over them like a dark cloud, and every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound in the trees, made their hearts race. Jason tried to keep a level head, but the fear gnawed at him too. Sarah's presence was both a comfort and a constant reminder that their situation was dire. Still, he couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility growing within him. He had promised to protect her, and he would keep that promise, no matter the cost. A strange call. It was late one evening when Jason sat by the fire, flipping through a local newspaper he had found in a drawer, trying to distract himself from the looming uncertainty. The flames crackled softly, and Sarah sat nearby, staring into the fire, lost in thought. Then, the phone rang. Jason froze. They had only one phone, an old landline that had been disconnected from the outside world for years. He had used it briefly earlier to check for messages, but he hadn't expected it to ring. His heart thudded in his chest as he stared at the receiver. There was only one person who would have this number, and he had been warned by David that someone close to him was involved in the search. With a hesitant hand, Jason picked up the receiver. Hello. The voice on the other end was cold, calculated, and unmistakable. Jason, it's time we talked. Jason's blood ran cold. The voice was deep, rich with authority. It was the voice of someone used to control, someone who could make things happen with a mere command. I didn't want to get you involved in this, but here we are. You're running out of time, Jason, the voice continued. Sarah thinks she can escape, but she's wrong. Her past is tied to us, and there's nowhere for her to run. If you want to keep her safe, you'll do exactly what I say. Jason's mind raced, trying to place the voice. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint where he had heard it before. Every instinct told him to hang up, to run, to do anything but listen. But he was stuck. Who is this? Jason demanded, trying to steady his voice. What do you want? A brief chuckle came from the other end. I think you know exactly who I am. But I'll give you a hint. You're too deep into this to turn back now. It's already too late. Jason's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a game. This was real. What do you want from me? Jason said, his voice firm but edged with fear. I want you to stay away from her, the voice replied, lowering. If you truly care about her, you'll leave. You'll walk away and forget everything you think you know. Otherwise, we'll make you regret it. And Sarah will never be the same. The line clicked before Jason could respond. He stared at the receiver, his heart pounding in his chest. The threat was real. This wasn't just a warning, it was a message. Someone knew where they were. Someone was watching. And Sarah, with all her secrets and lies, was the key. Sarah's revelation. Jason didn't know what to do. The call had left him shaken, but there was no time to waste. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. He turned to Sarah, who had been sitting silently across the room, her face pale, her eyes haunted. It was as though she had known the conversation was coming. What did they want? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, but it held a depth of emotion that made Jason pause. She wasn't surprised. She had known something like this would happen. I don't know who they are, Jason said, sitting next to her. But they know about us. They're watching us. They say it's too late, that there's no escape. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached up to run them through her hair, as if trying to process the gravity of his words. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. Her eyes flickered, as if trying to decide whether or not to reveal the truth. I knew they'd find us eventually, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I should have told you everything from the beginning. I should have never let you get involved. Jason's chest tightened at the guilt in her voice, but he reached out, grabbing her hand. Sarah, it's not your fault. We're in this together. What happened? Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the flames. You don't know the full story. I didn't want you to know, but now there's no choice. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he waited for her to continue. The past unveiled. I come from a family of power, Jason, Sarah began, her voice thick with emotion. Not the kind of power you see in business or politics, but the kind that runs beneath the surface. The kind that is built on secrecy, control, and manipulation. Jason listened intently, his mind racing. What do you mean? My family runs a criminal empire, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the weight of the words. But it's not just about money. It's about control. About power. They manipulate people, use them like pawns in a game. They own entire industries, run illegal operations, and have people in places of power, people you wouldn't even recognize. Jason sat in stunned silence, unable to process the magnitude of what she was saying. But why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you just walk away? Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. I tried. I really did. But my father, he doesn't let people walk away. I couldn't just leave. I couldn't get out without bringing everything crashing down. He's too powerful, too dangerous. Jason's thoughts spun. He had known that Sarah had a past, but he had never imagined it was anything like this. It explained so much, the fear in her eyes, the guilt that had haunted her for so long. But it didn't make him want to leave her any less. If anything, it made him want to protect her even more. "So, they're hunting you," Jason said quietly. "Because you left." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "And now they're after you too. You're involved because you got close to me. They'll use you to get to me. They'll stop at nothing." Jason's thoughts raced as he tried to digest everything she was saying. He had no idea what kind of family Sarah had come from, but it was clear now that they were dealing with something far more dangerous than either of them could have imagined. "We have to leave," Jason said, a new sense of urgency in his voice. "We can't stay here. They'll find us." But Sarah shook her head. "It's not that simple. I thought I could outrun them. But I can't. They always find people like me." "Then we'll make them regret it," Jason said, his tone unwavering. "We'll fight back." Sarah looked at him with a mix of disbelief and admiration. "You don't know what you're up against. My father's empire is everywhere. They have eyes everywhere, Jason." "I don't care," Jason said, determination hardening his resolve. "We'll find a way out. Together. A new plan." As the night deepened, Jason and Sarah sat in the dim light of the cabin, their minds swirling with plans and possibilities. The threat was real, but so was their desire to survive. Jason had no intention of backing down, not when Sarah's life was at stake. "I know where we can go," Sarah said suddenly, breaking the silence. "There's a safe house. One of my father's old associates has a place. It's off the grid. He owes me a favor." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "But how do we trust him?" "I don't know if we can," Sarah replied, her eyes dark with doubt. "But it's our best shot." Jason's mind raced as he considered the risks. But as he looked at Sarah, sitting there beside him, he knew there was no turning back. He had already made a choice. And now, it was time to see it through. The safe house Sarah mentioned wasn't far. Jason had been skeptical at first, but the urgency in her voice convinced him that it was their only shot. They couldn't stay in the cabin any longer. It was only a matter of time before someone tracked them down. The calls, the threats, the chilling warning they had received, everything pointed to one undeniable truth: the walls were closing in. The road to the safe house. They packed quickly, throwing essentials into a single bag. Jason's mind raced as he moved, but he forced himself to focus. There wasn't time for second-guessing. The clock was ticking. If they waited too long, they'd be trapped. As they stepped out of the cabin into the fading light of dusk, the air felt thick, as though something unseen was pressing in on them. The woods were eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of wind in the trees. Jason tried to shake the sense of dread that had taken root in his chest. He hadn't signed up for any of this. His life had been simple before Sarah, predictable. But now, it seemed like the ground beneath him was shifting, and no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't escape it. "We'll be fine," Sarah said, her voice steady. But Jason could hear the tremor beneath her words. She wasn't sure either. They both knew it was a gamble. The drive was tense. Jason kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was elsewhere, piecing together everything he had learned in the past few days. Sarah's family was dangerous, more dangerous than he had ever imagined. They weren't just criminals. They were an empire built on secrecy, manipulation, and power. The depth of their reach was staggering. He could feel the weight of it settling around him, like a cloak of doom. But Sarah had been part of that world. She had been raised in it. He couldn't help but wonder how much of it she had known. How much of it she had been involved in. And, most haunting of all, why had she chosen to walk away? The safe house. The drive took longer than expected, but the night was still young when they arrived at the safe house, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the hills. It was hidden well, surrounded by trees and with no clear road leading to it. Jason's first impression was one of stark isolation. The kind of place where no one would find you unless they knew exactly where to look. Sarah led the way as they made their way up to the door. It creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dark interior. She flicked the switch by the door, and dim light filled the room. "This is it," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's not much, but it'll do." Jason stepped inside, his eyes scanning the sparse surroundings. A few pieces of old furniture, a fireplace in the corner, and what appeared to be a small kitchen area. It looked like a place where people came to disappear. Where people like Sarah could hide from the world. As they settled in, Sarah immediately went to the old phone sitting on the counter and dialed a number. Jason watched her, his heart racing. Was she really going to make this call? Was she sure about this? She seemed so calm, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Sarah didn't waste time on pleasantries. "It's Sarah," she said, her voice low. "I need your help. I'm in danger." Jason stiffened, listening intently. Who was she speaking to? Someone from her past, no doubt. Someone connected to her family. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then the voice responded. "I don't know if I can help you, Sarah. You've already put us all at risk by leaving." "I don't have a choice," Sarah replied, her voice urgent. "They're after me. You know how they are. They won't stop." "I'm listening," the voice said reluctantly. "But you have to be sure about this. The moment you step into this, there's no going back." Jason could hear the tension in the conversation. The man, if that's who it was, sounded reluctant, like someone who didn't want to get involved but was already too deep into it. "I'm sure," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "I can't keep running. But I can't go back either. They'll kill me if they find me." "All right," the voice said finally. "I'll meet you tomorrow. Don't bring anyone else." The line clicked before Sarah could say anything more. Jason stood motionless, waiting for her to speak, to explain. He didn't trust this person, didn't know them, but if Sarah did, that had to count for something. Still, the knot in his stomach only tightened. "We'll meet him tomorrow," Sarah said, turning to face him. Her eyes were hard now, the vulnerability from earlier replaced with something more determined. "We have no choice. If we want to survive, we need his help." Jason nodded, though doubt still lingered. He had already risked everything for Sarah, but this was different. Whoever this man was, he had connections to the very people who had made Sarah's life a nightmare. The same people who had put their lives in danger. "I don't like it," Jason said, his voice rough. "But I'm with you." Sarah's eyes softened for a moment, a fleeting expression of gratitude flashing across her face. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "I don't want to drag you into this," she said quietly, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I never wanted any of this for you. But now that you're here, you're in it whether you like it or not. The price of escape." The hours passed slowly as they settled into the safe house for the night. The silence between them was heavy, thick with unspoken words. Sarah had gone to bed early, leaving Jason alone with his thoughts. He couldn't sleep, couldn't quiet the whirlwind of questions and doubts that flooded his mind. Tomorrow, they were going to meet someone connected to her family, to the very empire that had torn her life apart. And though Sarah had insisted it was their only option, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. There were too many unknowns. Too many risks. He stood up, walked over to the window, and peered out into the darkness. The world outside seemed quiet, peaceful even, but Jason knew better than to trust appearances. This place might have seemed like a safe haven, but it was still part of the world that was hunting them. The empire that Sarah had left behind. The empire that would stop at nothing to get her back. Jason's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the phone ringing. His heart skipped a beat. Sarah had just gone to bed. Who could be calling now? He picked up the receiver, his fingers trembling slightly. Hello. There was a long pause before the voice on the other end spoke. It's not safe for you to stay there, Jason, the voice said, its tone calm but cold. I gave you a chance to walk away. Now, you've made your choice. And we don't take kindly to people making deals with our enemies. Jason's blood ran cold as the voice continued. Leave now, or you'll regret it. The morning had come far too quickly for Jason's liking. He hadn't slept much, the weight of last night's phone call pressing on him with each passing minute. The voice on the other end, cold and unyielding, had left him with a sinking feeling in his gut. It wasn't a threat that would go away easily, he knew that much. And yet, there was no way out. He had made his choice. He had chosen Sarah. And now they had to deal with the consequences. The meeting. Sarah had been up early, packing up their things with a quiet urgency. She didn't say much, her expression focused, her mind clearly elsewhere. Jason watched her from the kitchen as he drank his coffee, wondering what was going through her mind. Was she as nervous as he was? Or was she hiding something? Are you ready? She asked, her voice steady but tinged with anxiety. She didn't look at him, didn't seem to need any reassurance. It was almost as if she had already made peace with what was about to happen. Jason nodded. I'm ready. Good, she replied curtly. We need to leave soon. We can't be late. The safe house was still as quiet as it had been the night before. The woods outside had a strange, almost ominous stillness to them, as if the world was holding its breath. Jason didn't like the feeling. He had grown accustomed to the tension in the air, but something felt off today. It was as though the calm before the storm had become suffocating. They drove in silence, the car's engine the only sound in the otherwise empty world around them. Jason's mind raced as he tried to prepare himself for whatever came next. Who was this person they were meeting? What did they want? And why did they trust him? When they finally arrived at the meeting point, a secluded spot on the edge of a nearby town, Sarah stopped the car and turned to Jason. He'll be here any minute, she said quietly, her voice tight. Just stick to the plan. Don't say anything unless I tell you to. Jason didn't respond. He wasn't sure what to say. Part of him wanted to ask her more questions about the man they were meeting, but he knew better than to push. Sarah's silence had always been a shield. She kept her cards close, and Jason had learned to respect that. But today, he was beginning to feel like he wasn't just a passenger in this story anymore. He was part of it. And he was starting to question how deep he was willing to go. The man they meet. Minutes later, a black sedan pulled up behind them. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing a man dressed in a sharp suit. He had an air of authority about him, and despite the fact that he hadn't said a word, Jason could feel the tension in the air. This man was part of something bigger. Something that had power. Something that could crush them if it wanted to. Sarah opened the door before Jason could say anything, stepping out to greet the man. Is everything set? She asked, her tone clipped, but polite. The man nodded. You're sure about this? There's no turning back once you make your move. I'm sure, Sarah replied firmly, her eyes unwavering. Jason stepped out of the car, feeling the man's gaze fall on him. There was something cold about the way he looked at Jason. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm either. Just, calculating. And you're the one? The man asked, his voice deep, with a hint of amusement, as if Jason didn't belong in this world. Jason didn't like the way the man said, you. He felt like a pawn on a chessboard, like he was being sized up, evaluated. The man wasn't here for pleasantries. He was here for something else. I'm the one, Jason said, his voice steady, despite the unease pooling in his stomach. The man studied him for a moment longer before turning to Sarah. Let's talk inside. It's not safe to do this out in the open. They walked to a nearby building, an old warehouse that had clearly been repurposed for these kinds of meetings. The inside was bare, with only a few chairs and a table set in the center of the room. A dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the space. Jason felt like they were walking into a trap, but he kept his doubts to himself. They had no other choice. Once inside, the man gestured for them to sit. We need to be quick. There are eyes everywhere, and I don't have time to waste. Sarah sat across from him without hesitation, and Jason took a seat beside her. The man, whose name they still hadn't learned, looked between them with a cold, calculating gaze. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, the man said. You're running out of time. They're not just looking for you, Sarah. They're looking for both of you now. And if you want to survive, you need to act fast. Tell me what you know, Sarah demanded, her voice hard. The man smirked. It's not what I know, it's what you don't know. Your family's already moved on this. The clock is ticking. You think you're safe, but you're not. And Jason, he turned to Jason, his smirk turning into something darker, you're more involved than you realize. You've been playing a dangerous game without knowing the rules. Jason's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? The man leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Your connection to Sarah isn't just coincidence. You were always going to be caught up in this. She's part of something bigger, Jason. You just didn't know it. Jason felt like the ground was slipping from beneath him. What are you saying? The man ignored him, his eyes fixed on Sarah. You should have stayed out of this, but now you're too deep. Your family has plans for you. Plans that don't involve you running away with a man like him. Don't threaten him, Sarah interjected, her voice sharp. I'm here for a reason. We're both here for a reason. So stop playing games and tell us what we need to do. The man's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment, there was something almost respectful in his gaze. But then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. The only way out of this is to cut ties with everything. With your family. With everyone you've ever known. They're not going to stop until they find you. And the only way to make that happen is to disappear. For good. Jason's heart pounded. Disappear? What did that mean? Was this man suggesting they both leave everything behind, erase their identities, and vanish? You're saying we should run? Sarah asked, her voice betraying just a hint of doubt. The man didn't answer immediately. He studied them both, as if measuring their worth, their resolve. Finally, he nodded. It's the only way. But it's not simple. There's a price. And once you've paid it, there's no going back. The betrayal. Jason's heart raced as the man's words sank in. Pay the price? What price? Before he could ask another question, Sarah's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, her eyes narrowing as she read the message. They found us, she whispered, her face going pale. Jason stood, his breath caught in his throat. What do we do now? We run, Sarah said, her voice cold, calm. We leave. We disappear. The man stood up, moving toward the door. Get in the car. Now. It was a blur of motion as they followed the man out of the warehouse and into the car. Jason could feel his pulse hammering in his ears as they sped away, the reality of what they were about to do settling heavily on his shoulders. They were about to disappear, to erase their lives. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something much darker. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about betrayal, lies, and a future that neither of them had fully understood. The night was colder than Jason had expected. They had been driving for hours, the road stretching endlessly before them as the city lights disappeared behind them. The man in the black sedan had disappeared into the distance, but they had kept moving, as though every second mattered. Every moment was a race against time. Jason sat in the passenger seat, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his mind swirling with 1,000 questions. They had done it, disappeared. But what did it really mean? Who were they now? What kind of life were they about to build? It was all too much, too fast, and yet, there was no turning back. Beside him, Sarah remained silent. She had been silent for hours, her hands gripping the wheel tightly, her face set in an expression Jason couldn't read. It had been this way since they left the warehouse. Her calm exterior masked something deeper, a storm of emotions that Jason knew she was struggling to keep hidden. She wasn't the woman he had first met, the woman full of defiance and bravado. No, this Sarah was quieter, more guarded. She was someone he couldn't fully understand, someone who had been shaped by secrets and lies. The toll of running. As the car sped through the dark highway, Jason couldn't help but replay everything in his mind, the meeting, the betrayal, the coldness in the man's eyes. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had been playing a game from the very beginning, a game where the rules were constantly changing, and the stakes were far higher than they had ever realized. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about truth, deception, and the cost of freedom. "Sarah," Jason said softly, breaking the silence. "We can't just keep running. We need to understand what we're up against. What's really going on? Who's after us?" Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer immediately. They passed a small town, its lights flickering in the distance. Jason felt a pang of regret, but he quickly pushed it aside. There was no room for regrets. Not now. "I told you," she said, her voice low, her gaze fixed on the road. "We can't go back. Not after what we've learned. They'll never stop looking for us." Jason leaned forward, his voice rising with frustration. "But we don't even know what we're running from. I need to know the truth. If we're going to make it out of this, we need to understand what's really happening." Sarah's grip on the wheel tightened even further, and Jason could see the muscle in her jaw twitching. She wanted to speak, but something was holding her back, something far more powerful than fear. Jason could sense it, and it made him uneasy. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted you to be part of this, Jason. This was never meant to involve you. You don't understand how deep it goes. My family, they've been involved in things that I couldn't control. And now, they want me back. But it's not just me anymore. They want both of us." Jason's heart began to race. "What do you mean, both of us?" Her eyes flicked to him for a brief moment, then back to the road. "They know you're involved. You're a part of this now, whether you like it or not. You don't just walk away from a family like mine. They'll come after you, Jason. They'll come after us both." The truth unveiled. Jason felt a chill run through him. He had suspected as much, but hearing it from Sarah's lips made it all too real. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me this before? Why didn't you?" "I couldn't," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to drag you into my mess? You think I wanted to watch my family tear us apart? You don't know what it's like to be trapped in that world. They control everything. They make the rules, and if you don't play along, you get left behind." Jason shook his head. "But we can't just disappear. Not forever. We can't live like this." "Then what do you suggest we do?" she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. "You think we can go back to normal? After everything we've seen? After everything we've learned? There's no going back, Jason. Don't you get it? They've won. They always win." Jason took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm brewing inside him. He wasn't ready to give up yet. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be a way to fight back. We can still fight, he said, his voice firm. We have to. We can't just run forever. If we're going to get through this, we need to find a way to take control. We need to expose them. We need to make them see that we're not afraid. Sarah's eyes flicked to him, then back to the road. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and Jason could see the struggle inside her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to hold on to the hope that there was a way out of this nightmare. But she had seen too much, been through too much. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. But Jason wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The final decision. They continued to drive, the road stretching ahead of them, the sound of the tires humming in the background. It felt like an endless journey, one that Jason wasn't sure he was ready to take. But Sarah was right, they couldn't just run forever. They needed a plan. A way to take control of their lives and their future. As they neared the border of a new city, Sarah slowed the car and turned into a small, secluded parking lot. It was an empty stretch of land, surrounded by thick trees. Jason frowned, sensing something was wrong. Sarah, what are we? Shoo, she whispered, her eyes scanning the area. Get out. Now. Jason's pulse quickened as he followed her out of the car. His instincts were screaming at him to be careful, to stay alert. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, the headlights of another car appeared in the distance, cutting through the dark night like a knife. Jason froze. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. Before he could ask any more questions, a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was the man from the black sedan. I told you there was no running, he said, his voice smooth but with an edge of finality. The choice. Jason felt his heart race as the man took a step toward them. Behind him, Jason saw several other figures emerge from the darkness. They were surrounded. There was nowhere to go. Sarah, Jason said, his voice trembling with frustration, what's going on? This is it, Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. This is the end of the line. The man smiled darkly. Not quite. There's one last choice to make. You can stay and fight, but that will cost you everything. Or you can walk away from everything, and disappear forever. Jason's mind raced. Fight or run. It was the same choice he had faced from the beginning. But now, with everything on the line, the decision felt even more impossible. I don't want to disappear, Jason said, his voice firm. I want to fight. Sarah's eyes widened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she looked at him, truly looked at him. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something Jason couldn't quite place. And then, without another word, she made her choice. We fight, she said quietly, her voice filled with resolve. Jason didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing, the battle had only just begun. The final lesson. As the figures closed in, ready to challenge everything they had worked for, Jason understood something that had eluded him for so long. It wasn't about running, or fighting, or even winning. It was about the choice. The choice to stand up, to face what was coming, and to refuse to let fear dictate their lives. In the end, survival wasn't just about escaping. It was about fighting for the truth, for freedom, and for the people who mattered most. And Jason was ready to do whatever it took.